the military personnel, 75, as you mentioned, and yet one of the election promises, as it were, of this new president was, we're going to make sure that they leave. Now, do you see the China imprint? What's actually going on here? What's going on beyond the Lakshadweep versus Maldives spat?
Well, this is very clearly, you see the fingerprints of China all over the place. Even in the kind of language that is being used, I see a Global Times kind of language being used over here. It's the Global Times that uses this kind of language for foreign leaders when it wants to attack them. You have a similar language being used here. China has been trying to get bases around in this region. We know of in Myanmar they have done that. In Sri Lanka they have had some setback. Now they're looking for a place nearby, and they'll try and do this in the Maldives. We know how Chinese politics operates. We've seen recently how they have invested huge amounts of money in the business of Trump and Biden's son. So you have China plays around with its big money. It has deep pockets, and it uses the money to influence local politics in countries. If it can try and do that in the US and Australia and Canada and Britain, then Maldives is an extremely small country. Even a small amount of change from China will affect the politics of this country. So it's quite obvious that China has tried to influence the party and mold the leaders in the way in which it molds its own leaders to become hostile to India and attack not only its policies but also its leaders personally.
What do you think in this circumstance? What should be the response of India? There has been a societal response with all of Bollywood's top stars, from Amitabh Bachchan to Akshay Kumar. Akshay Kumar was holidaying in the Maldives a few days ago, but that's okay. How Maldives has been a very favored destination of many of the sort of wealthier Indians. But today, in the last 24 hours, we've seen everybody from Bachchan to Akshay Kumar to you name it, and they've tweeted about exploring Indian destinations. The subtext is clear. We don't accept what the Maldivians have done, and we will punish you commercially. You have Ease My Trip, an online booking website, travel website, saying we're canceling bookings. You have models saying we had professional shooting assignments, we're not going. Now, how far can this go? What is the rapprochement in this conversation? Like, what happens next, according to you?
This is a very difficult situation for us. Maldives is a very close neighbor. It has been a very friendly neighbor, and there is no reason for us to uh, make things any worse than they have already gotten. Uh, we must also remember that India is a very large country as compared to Maldives, and any kind of hardline policy will be seen internationally as bullying a very
Mhm.
small country. And that we have to be very careful about. Because financially, I don't think we can harm Maldives very much, especially if it has China's backing, and there are tourists coming in from other regions as well. China and Russia are the number two and number three providers of tourists to the Maldives. So it is not as if we cannot harm Maldivian economy, but there's no reason for us to do it. As I said, this is the action of one particular group of people who have come to power in the Maldives now. We have to look at a larger policy of our relationship with the people of the Maldives. The party that was in power till very recently, all its leaders have gone against the government. So we have to look at that constituency in that country and try and build on that. We cannot obviously do anything about how the people react, people who are canceling their holidays. But certainly the government should behave in a manner in which it treats the Maldives as a friendly country, which has unfortunately fallen in the hands of a bunch of inexperienced, perhaps hostile people. But keeping the larger picture in mind, I think we should go about it very carefully in this and try and ensure that we do not lose the sympathy of the other political parties in the Maldives, and ensure that the key point that we have to look at here is that our security should not be undermined by anybody,
Yeah.
certainly not by a non-Indian Ocean country like China coming into the picture. And here I think we can coordinate our action with other countries, whether it is neighboring countries like Sri Lanka or it is a country like the US. Remember, the US Secretary of State called up the Maldivian foreign minister a day or two before they were supposed to go to China. So other countries are also concerned about China coming into the situation here. So we should exercise patience, go about it carefully, so that the pressure is built up on the Maldives very carefully and slowly, and not in a ham-handed way. We must also appreciate that Maldives has done well. It has the highest per capita income. It has very limited resources, and yet it has built an economy based on tourism. So we should appreciate that fact also, that a small country in South Asia has a very high per capita income, and there's no reason for us to
But but
undermine that
but
prosperity
here's
of.
but here's the problem. The problem is that those who made the derogatory remarks about the about our prime minister were officials in the government. You know, they were deputy ministers, and they were not trolls. They were not random public. You see, anyone is free as a citizen of a free country to say something about anybody else. But when they are people in the government, then they have to, you know, the government of India has to respond accordingly. Now, are these suspensions enough? Should this matter end here? Or do you think that we should be looking for something more concrete? Like an apology at the highest level, a phone call from the president to the prime minister, something more.
Well, I think the suspension should be allowed, should be insisted upon, that these people should be removed from the government.
Yeah.
That should really be enough. I don't think an apology would be forthcoming from the president. That would be asking for too much from this. I think we should let this lie if the three ministers are removed from government,
Yeah.
and then we have to see how the government behaves. But the larger and the more important issue is the issue of security of
Yeah.
Maldives giving facilities to China. There we should put our foot down and say that no neighboring country can fool around with our security. And there, if they do that, then they will have the heavy hand of India coming falling on them.
In that context, I want to ask you: a recent Global Times editorial actually spoke cheekily about triangular cooperation between India, China, and the Maldives, which is obviously not going to happen. When you talk about China's foot fingerprints all over this, and how the key concern should be India's security interests, where would your immediate focus be?
I would focus on the whole of the region. I mean, it is whether it is Maldives or it is Sri Lanka or it is the Bay of Bengal, Myanmar's the Bay of Bengal coast of Myanmar. All these regions, China is not a country of this region, and there is no reason for China to start trying to come into this region. We have our littoral countries in this region. They can take care of the Indian Ocean. There are problems. There have been issues of piracy, etc. But the countries of the region can take care of these problems. So there is no reason why China should try and start putting its foot into this region. It has created enough problems for the countries of South China Sea. We do not want China in this region. So that is the point where we should be very firm that the countries of this region, if they start giving naval bases to China, then that will be seen as a hostile act by us.
And do you think that could happen? That Maldives could actually think of giving a naval base, its land as a naval base to China?
Well, the only important island they have is down south, Gan, the island of Gan, which was used at one time by Britain. Otherwise, I suppose, they can't really give a naval base because the islands are not conducive to that.
Yeah.
But the very fact that ships will keep coming in and going out so close to India will be uncomfortable for us and be unsettling for us. So we have to look at that, even if it's not a regular base that is being given, because that's extremely difficult given the geological situation of the islands. But even if ships keep coming in and going out, it will be seen as a hostile intent by us.